Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Rona Williams, and we want to welcome you to another edition of Church Talk. This is where critical conversations for church leaders are happening live right here on our YouTube channel. Listen, tonight's episode is one you do not want to miss. So I need everyone to just pause for a moment, go over to the share button, share this live stream to your social media platforms. You want to invite your entire audience to join us here tonight for this incredible conversation. Tonight, we're talking about youth ministry reimagined. And we're going to be talking about creating a thriving youth and young adult ministry. So many church leaders come to us and they ask us about how do we get younger people to become active and to participate in our churches. And there is no one answer, guys, but we do have some people here tonight who will help you all decode, unscramble, become more comfortable with developing ministry ideas that are attractive to younger generations. We've got some incredible youth and young adult ministry leaders, and I'm going to allow them to just introduce themselves. They have incredible backgrounds, and I know that you're going to glean a whole lot from them. So I'd like to invite each of our guests onto the platform tonight. And as you come on, I want you guys to just take a moment and introduce yourselves to our entire audience and let them know who you are and what you do in the area of youth ministry. So joining us first tonight will be Brandi Williams. Brandi, will you come on and just share with our audience?
Hi, good evening. Thank you, Dr. Rona. My name is Brandi Nicole Williams, and I am the director for the African American Church Evangelism Institute at the Wheaton College Billy Graham Center. Our focus is to help mobilize African American churches and pastors to have a more significant gospel impact. And so we do that through evangelism training, but one of our emphasis is growing churches younger. And so we believe from generation to generation, God is doing a new thing. And so the research that we've done focuses on traits of Gen Z. We've done research to understand what they're looking for within their churches, within their leadership practices, so on and so forth. So I'm just excited to share what we've learned and how leaders can apply these practices to their particular context.
Wow. Thank you so much for joining us, Brandi. You guys give it up for my good friend, Brandi Williams. We also have tonight Reverend CeCe Collins. CeCe, will you come on and just introduce yourself to our audience tonight?
Hello. How are you this evening? My name is Reverend Cyreeta Collins, but the young people gave me the name Reverend CeCe a long time ago, so I kept it. I am the Connectional Youth Ministry Director for the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. I've been in this role, I think about 16 years now. I love youth ministry. I love empowering young people. My work focuses mainly on young people between the ages of 12 to 17 and the people who lead them as well. So I'm excited to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you so much, Reverend CeCe. Listen, I love the story. The kids at my church nicknamed me P-Dub or PW, right? Because they said they weren't going to say Pastor Williams the whole time. So now all the senior saints call me PW too. So right. I love the way they do that. I love the way they do that. So we're going to introduce someone else to the platform tonight who also has a nickname in ministry, Pastor Dartanyan Jamerson. Pastor DJ, will you come on and introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey guys, I am Dartanyan Jamerson. Everyone affectionately calls me Pastor DJ. It's been that way for many, many years. I am the senior pastor of Greater Faith Baptist Church in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And I am also the general overseer of children and youth for the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship International. We are an international ministry, of course, and I am responsible for everyone from ages 5 to 18 there as far as the fellowship is concerned. And in ministry, it's been everyone from ages 5 to about 30 for mentoring and other things. So I absolutely believe that young people do want Jesus. Young people do want fellowship and relationship. They just kind of tired of tradition. And it is our job to help them understand why tradition is important, why foundation is important, but to remind the seasoned saints that foundation was always meant to be built upon. So let's get it.
Oh, Pastor DJ is ready tonight. Listen, we can't introduce all of you guys who are watching us in the room, but you can jump in the comments and let us know what church do you attend, where are you joining us from, who are you supporting. And listen, don't forget, this is supposed to be an interactive conversation, right? So we don't want you to just watch us tonight. We want you to join in the conversation. Jump in those comments. If we're saying something that resonates with you, like, love it, share it. And if there's something you want to say to us, drop it in the comments and we may be able to address your question. Listen, we don't want to waste any time. Let's get right in the conversation tonight. All right. I want to say Dr. Brandi because we're so close.
We're so close.
We're so close. I'm practicing in my brain. But Brandi, in your role at Wheaton, you guys have done some research around the millennial generation, Gen Z kind of segment. Can you define for us what ages we're truly talking about? Like, which group of people are we really talking about with that?
Yeah, so Gen Z, if we're talking about youth in the church, then we stick with Gen Z because Gen Z is ages 12 to 25, and maybe 26 this year. So ages 12 to 26 represents Gen Z. Millennials would be 27 to 42 years old. I like to call myself the elder of the millennials. So
I'm officially no longer a young adult. I just realized I'm at least 10 years away from that. So in my mind, I was still there. Listen, I was there. So describe the congregations, how you recommend to congregations to engage this age group. Like, what are some of the recommendations you provide to church leaders?
Yeah, you know what? I think well, first, let me say this. Everything is about change, right? And evolution. Like God is always doing something new. So from generation to generation, there's change, which means there's culture change, which means there has to be leadership change, right? It's just inevitable. And so what that means, but sometimes what that triggers in our older generation are these perceived threats that it's going to take something away from them or make them less significant. But we know that we're all significant within God's kingdom. And so what I like to do is encourage older leaders to understand that there's great opportunity available when you actually embrace the younger generation. So first of all, just from a biblical standpoint, embracing the younger generation allows you to fulfill the Great Commission, right? Like that's just hands down, that's what we're here to do, right? Like, and so there you have it. Like that, take all the excuses out the window because we fulfilling the Great Commission. It also provides an opportunity to pass down traditions and values, right? So it's really about reframing how you think about what engaging youth means. And then it's legacy building. A lot of times when I'm talking to pastors about our evangelism training program at the African American Church Evangelism Institute, we focus on church culture change. And so a lot of folks are tired these days, right, in ministry. And so they may not see the value of joining or enrolling in a 2-year program that helps to shift the mindset and the context and the culture of their churches. But then I'll ask the question, are you concerned about your legacy? Do you want to leave a legacy? And then also helping them frame it that way in terms of like, this is an opportunity for you to build a legacy, for you to have more energetic engagement and diverse perspectives. So first, I would say, first and foremost, it's always about a mindset change. And so those are some of the few things that I begin the conversation with around mindset.
Man, that is so good. Listen, that is a major blockage. I think a lot of times we are not paying attention to that. Our failure to engage them means that we are not carrying out the commands of Christ, right? So we've got to focus on it. Otherwise, we're failing at the Great Commission. Like that's just central. Pastor DJ, let's talk about the variety of approaches in youth ministry. You're serving on an international level. So what are some of the things that you found to be effective ways as leaders we can create an engaging youth ministry at our churches?
Well, the first thing is to listen. First thing you have to engage them in conversation. Is for far too many years, it's been a situation where the leaders or the pastors are telling people what to do and how to do. And so I start with that, because oftentimes we fail to put the right person in place. The best available person could still be the wrong person. Sometimes we're in such a rush to match the church down the street, because families are going to leave if there's not enough for their young people or for their kids. But if you put the wrong person in place, it's really inviting a wolf in where the sheep live. So we have to consider if we have the right person. So out of the gate, we have to consider that. Then the other part is we have to listen to them and understand where they are. Okay. Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians in chapter 19, in chapter 9, around verse 19, he says, I became all things to all men so I can save some. And so people forget that while we're doing this, Paul recognized at the beginning of the church that not everyone would listen to the gospel. Not everyone will come along. So this cannot be a people-pleasing thing, because the people that are meant to be connected to your ministry will be connected, no matter what. So that's one part. Okay, so you got a couple parts there. You got the right person. You got to have the right conversation and understand where they're struggling at, because young people are going to ask questions. Dr. Brandi was talking about her research. These generations are going to ask why. When they ask why, it's not a challenge to your tradition or your understanding or your rationale. They're asking why because the circles they run in, they don't know why.
Right.
Whereas the circles many of us may have run in, I'm 50, on the other side of 50 now. So, but when you consider the circles we ran in, the people we ran in, their families talked like our family. Now, what you instill in your kids is being attacked and torn down from the moment they leave the door. So you have to be able to hear what they're struggling with to understand where you step in. Paul said, I became all things. What he was saying was, I stepped into their space to understand things from their perspective. So that's what we have to do. Okay. And we have to stop giving them traditional foundation answers as the reason, because they're going to say why to that. Okay, so we have to really understand that and then recognize that it is a sense of urgency. The church, the Big C church, is in a state of emergency, because we have to consider what the true health of our churches are. So I caution us when we look at or consider what's going to help our ministries and the myriad of ways we can use. First, we have to recognize our people is not the people down the street. Our people is not the people on the other side of the country. So while there may be great ideas or strategies, we have to recognize what will feed our people and what won't. Okay, we can't keep coming back with a cookie cutter and saying this works because you're this age. Well, last I checked, I think the attention span in that space was about 8 to 9 seconds. So you got to have some fluidity in ministry. You got to have some fluidity in conversation and dialogue, and they have to have a person in front of them that not only they can visually and relationally connect to, they got to want to listen to them. Okay, wow. Which takes us back to the right person. So having a multi-generational mindset, a pipeline, if you will, of how you have a warm handoff from the kid that can barely just really read well or starting to read well all the way till they get ready to transition into college and there beyond. You have to have this warm handoff throughout the ministry. And there has to be these conversations across generations so that we can have the dialogue, so there can be clarity and understanding.
Yeah, and that's so important.
I'll say this and then I'll pause. I mentioned this before, is that oftentimes churches are living or operating from a place of delusion. They think that because they have what they believe is a great kids program, everything should be okay. No, that's not true. Because what I find oftentimes is that a lot of times the children and youth and young adult leaders are more in tune to the people. I'm gonna get somebody in trouble. They're more in tune to the people than sometimes the lead or senior pastor. It's not an assault. It's not an attack. What it is that person, he or she, ends up not just pastoring the kids, but pastoring their families. Because they're not going to go to the senior pastor and say, I don't understand this boy. Or I don't understand her. They're going to go to the student pastor or the youth leader. Okay. And that is going to be the person that helps bridge the communication with the families. Right. So we have to understand that. And if you have the right person, you have the right plan, the right programming, be intentional about your Bible teaching and recognizing what the true capacity of your church is. because there are some things that probably should not be implemented if you don't have the capacity to sustain it, because then it'll be you dropped it.
Yeah, it's more
will,
damage.
and young people, you have to strike while the iron's hot. If you lose a young person's trust or a young person's confidence, if you will, you almost never get it back.
You don't.
So
Reverend
it's
CeCe,
best to implement when you should.
I know I know you are on the edge of your seat. What do you add to the conversation? Because he always starts it. So, now we're all in it. Now we just have to go with it.
Hey.
What are you thinking as you hear all of it?
Relationship is important.
Mm.
And I think we try to feed them Jesus without the relationship first. And so, as he just said, without having that relationship, they're not. They can go anywhere and do anything. And sometimes young people feel more love outside of the church than they feel inside the church. Inside the church, they feel judgment. They don't feel like they have a place in the church. And so I might as well go down the street because that's where I feel love. They accept me. They know my name. When I'm teaching and training young youth leaders, I say, if you do not know the names of the young people in your church, you've already failed them.
Oh, Lord.
Like, you over there, come here. What's your name? Call them John, Sally, Susie. No, you have to know the names of the young. If you have to practice it over and over and over again, do that. Because when you don't know them, you can't reach them. You can't reach their family. Can't reach their peers. It's a downhill cycle from there. So I agree. We got to do.
Conversation is hot, and building the relationships with kids is so important, right? Yeah. Because they have more access to information than we ever had in our lives. I remember having to do research projects from that set of encyclopedias, and we thought we were doing something when we owned some encyclopedias. These kids have Google at their fingertips. Like, listen, they can get the information, but they can't get the relationship from anywhere. So that is so key that you brought that up. Listen, you guys are in
Can I say something about Google? I just want to make one comment about Google. We can move.
Okay.
One comment about Google. Here's the challenge. The challenge is far too many youth leaders getting their info from Google too.
Not the scholar version.
They pulling a sermons, right? They pulling a sermon, they pulling a small group messages, they pulling everything from Google. And a lot of times Google is not correct. I don't just mean that theologically. Say that again, Brandi.
No, I feel like that DJ sound should have dropped when you said that. Like, I feel like that should have dropped when you said that.
It's true, but most people realize that not all of those results are going to be legitimate, theologically accurate, well vetted. So if you are a youth leader, you're looking for resources. There are places that have great curriculum out there. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. I do not believe in reinventing the wheel, but at the same time, when you choose a curriculum or you choose a resource, you still have to lay that before Holy Spirit so he can reveal to you how to tweak this for your audience, your children, their issues, their preferences. You can't always use things right out the box. So I so agree with you too, Pastor DJ, around that. Listen, there are so many church leaders that are on the line tonight. Listen, we want you guys to jump in this conversation. Ask us the hard questions, the things you've always wanted to know about and no one's really addressed for you. I want to talk about developing youth leaders. I want to throw it out here. What are some of the things that churches have to be and church leaders have to be very intentional about when it comes to equipping our church leaders? Brandi, we'll start with you because you do a lot of leadership training in that area.
So Pastor DJ touched on it in terms of understanding, but I think in the reality is like, again, it's really all mindset with me. Like it's like, in order to serve the generation, you have to understand the generation, and then you have to understand how generations affect one another. So, for example, for a millennial, right? Like, I know exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. Now, a younger millennial probably doesn't, right? And then most certainly a Gen Z doesn't, right? And so then maybe with a Gen X person, they were known as like the latchkey kids, for example, right? So you have these like personality types, right? And then the Gen Z, they're the ones with digital age. They've been attached to their phones. How does that shape who they are, how they show up, what they pay attention to? So it's like, before we even go spiritual, I think Dr. Reverend CeCe said it, like, you need the relationship before you try to spoon feed them Jesus. Well, I think even understanding societal factors, right, that were occurring around the time of each generation informs you of how a generation will respond. So I love the text, Pastor DJ, that you talked about, Paul being all things to all people. Like, that's part of the equation. It's the learning. That's part of the equipping, the intentionality in learning. So, right now, I mean, if we include Gen Alpha in terms of young adult and up, it's 5 generations in the church. We include Gen Alpha, that's 6 generations in the church. Like, how do you think you're going to thrive together? How do you think you're going to act in love towards one another if you don't have a basic understanding? And so that being said, really, in terms of the research that we've done, Pastor DJ, you're absolutely right. They want to wrestle. So in the focus groups that we conducted with Gen Z and young millennials, they're not even looking for the folk. And we did churched and unchurched, but now for the churched young adults, they weren't even trying to buck against, basic doctrine or just kind of foundation of the church. They just want to be able to wrestle. They just want to be able to. I remember one young lady saying, "Don't just tell me about your mountaintop. What occurred in the valley?"
In the valley.
Yes.
Right. And
they
so
want a level of authenticity.
They do want authenticity.
Yeah.
I think also, so when I'm saying this, you're talking about equipping, but I think that just even some of these things go with a part of the equipping. I think another really crucial thing, it makes me cringe when people say the next generation. No, this is right now. This is generation now. Like, this is not next. It is right now. It is happening. It is occurring right now. Right. So remember earlier I talked about as generations change, culture change, and leadership changes, they have to have an opportunity to, I can't remember where it comes from. You all know that with the I do, we do, you do. Y'all know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Kind of like the transition, like are grooming someone for leadership.
Yeah, you're mentoring.
And so we have to give folks the opportunity to see what it is that we do and be vulnerable and transparent enough to see like the good, the bad, the indifferent as we come along. And I think that that's a part creates learning opportunities as well. I think that even you say in terms of youth leaders, I don't even necessarily see a youth leader as someone being someone who is over youth. I see it as someone that could even be someone that is among youth. So how are you equipping them to be a peer leader and have influence among their peers, because their peers are most likely to respond to someone that looks like them.
That's
right?
So good.
And then that points to discipleship, but then that's a whole
other conversation.
That's a
right?
issue. Discipleship. But anyway, that is a form of discipleship, that leadership development process.
Right. Reverend CeCe, I know you're ready to go because she does work just piggybacking off of the youth and leadership piece. What do you want to share with our audience about that leaders and young leaders?
Absolutely. So just to give a little context, I oversee young people 12 to 17 across our denomination and the people who lead them. But I have the unique pleasure of working with 9 young people who represent each one of our Episcopal districts. They are between that age of 12 to 17, and they lead our ministry. A lot different than other denominations. They have their youth ministry include people who are 19, 20, 21, 23. But in our case, our young people are 12 to 17. Those are the ones that are leading our generation. They just want a seat at the table. They can make it work. I would put the young people up against some of the best, you call the best leaders, to plan things. They can plan. I think the young man's gonna come on his school. How is it that young people can work in school environment? And so they can do amazing things, but they can't work in the church. That doesn't make any sense. One of my young people, he's now in college. He worked with his school, and they raised over $100,000 in a little bit of time for the school. But we won't allow them into the room when it comes time to raise money for our churches. I don't understand it. So I tell them, if there is no seat at the table, either bring a chair or stand against the wall.
Come on.
There's no way in the world that this generation of young people are not in the room. If you don't have a room for them to be in, they're going to make a room somewhere else.
They will.
We don't want to start over. We want to hold on forever. We cannot do that. Young people need a seat at the table. And if you've been at the table for 50 years, it's time for you to give up your seat or move over and let the young person sit next to you. It makes no sense. But
everything that you're saying, Reverend CeCe, because I think a big part of it is intergenerational. You have all the different sects of leadership that you could talk about. And you can talk about intergenerational leadership, but at the end of the day, intergenerational leadership is just for the ability to partner with, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like it anyway, go ahead, Pastor DJ, because I know you.
No, I was sitting there. I was like, said Pastor Reverend CeCe gonna go in. So, but she is absolutely right. And here's the missed opportunity. The missed opportunity is that we wait so long that they have to move or they die off, and then all of the information and the wisdom and the grace and everything else leaves with them. So it's like they have not created any pipeline to say, let me teach you, let me show you. You know, the Bible tells us in Titus that the older women should teach the younger women, that the older men should teach the younger men. It like we have a scriptural, blueprint that the church does not use. And I hear them say all the time, young people don't bring money in. But guess what? If your young people, if your youth ministry, your children and youth, young adult ministry is not the most important, and I will add to it before I take away from it. If they are not the most important groups that you're pouring into, guess what? You're going to be in trouble, because what's happened is Reverend CeCe said they're going to make a table somewhere else. They're going to make a table, and they may not fall away from God. They're going to fall away from church.
Altogether.
Those two different things. And watch this. When your people fall away, your young people fall away, young people follow young people. And young people who are in homes where their parents are not providing discipline, which is, if there's no discipline, there's no discipleship. If parents are not ruling the home, then their kids are going to go with them. And then you end up with a church that's already dead, and they just practicing their eulogy every Sunday. They just don't know they dead yet. And what's going to happen is when those generations start falling off, you'll start finding out that your church is absolutely lacking. And then where do you get the wisdom? Then the people that are in place are too old to mentor.
Right.
Because they don't have the patience, and they no longer have the grace. And the young people are looking at them like, you can't even form full sentences anymore. I mean, really, because then, and their heart is not to be disrespectful, but now you've sat and waited on me for you made me sit for so long, that I don't even know if my fire still burns the same.
My God.
Well, I think that's what happened with millennials, right? A lot of times I go places and folks still want to talk about millennials. It's like, we're not the ones you're looking for. You missed us. Now, if you have us, you better leverage us. But we're not the ones you're talking to.
Right. Because the millennial generation are the people who have launched businesses. They're running corporations, right? They're doing all this amazing stuff in their community, and they come to church and we still call them young man, or we still belittle them, right? As if they need to wait their turn. And it's like, are you not reading the highlights, guys? This person is on the front of magazines. What are you talking about?
And look, if the leadership has enough sense not to belittle them, the pastors and the leaderships often, not all, I know some very exceptional pastors and leaderships across the country that are doing phenomenal jobs with multi-generational ministry. But watch this, those millennials, if we will, young adults that still stay tied to the churches that are there, the problem is the pastors and leaders have not equipped themselves with the knowledge to understand where the millennials or the young adults are standing, so they can't engage them in conversation. And they don't realize that you have everything you need for economic development within the church and expansion, but you are not tapping into them.
That's so true. The millennial generation has mystified me because the things we consider to be barriers, they consider to just be a boundary that they were willing to cross.
Right.
And so much of what we see in the area of innovation, in leadership, in entrepreneurship is just that generation's mindset that I won't let anything stop me or block me. Who said I can't? That's how they approach life. That's how they approach business. That's how they approach their careers. You know, they made bold moves from that different lens. And sometimes when you're an older leader, that may be intimidating because I'm not used to even being in that context where you don't live according to the blueprint that was presented to you, right? You're living according to the dream God placed in your heart. And that can be so scary for some other folks. Listen, we've got some phenomenal young people who are going to join us for just a moment. We want to bring them in the room because we want to hear from them. I'm going to introduce you guys to our project coordinator, Myra Bellinger. She's going to be joining us tonight for this part of the conversation. And we're going to bring into the room Dartanyan King. And we're going to yield the floor also to Grace Robinson. I want you guys to hear Grace, come to know what Grace is doing, and be so impacted by their stories and their journey. So I'm going to yield the floor to Myra.
Good evening, everybody. What a conversation we're having. And we're so grateful that you are here. I've been in the green room trying to scream. You guys couldn't hear me. You couldn't hear me, but I was screaming and wanting to join the conversation. But this is my moment. I absolutely, before being a senior pastor, was and still have a love and a heart for our youth today. So with that being said, Grace, there you are. Grace Robinson and Dartanyan, is that how we say it? Dartanyan King. Can you just introduce yourselves briefly, really quickly? Just tell me where you're from, Dartanyan, and what you do real quick, and then we'll get the conversation rolling.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Dartanyan King. I am I'm growing out of the youth ministry, but I am a freshman political science major. And I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, and I attend the best HBCU, Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia.
All right, Grace, you want to tell us really quickly who you are, where you're from, and then we'll get y'all's conversation going. Grace, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
We'll
now I
come back.
can.
Very good. Now I can hear you. Tell us who you are, where you're from.
My name is Grace Robinson. Okay.
How old are you?
Georgia.
You are from Georgia. Okay. And how old are you? I think she might be having some difficulty hearing us. It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay. So let's get the conversation going. Dartanyan, I know that you can hear me very well. And Grace, when you can, just give me a thumbs up that you can hear me so we can have this discussion. A lot of people say a lot of things about the young people. And I have always despised hearing you are not the church of tomorrow. Absolutely not. You are the church of today. I want to know what motivates you kind of to have participate in church activities and, in your case, Dartanyan, youth leadership.
So what motivates me is simply seeing the call of the youth. Youth are crying out for Christ, and it's very evident within my peers. When in high school, many people were trying to find a place to go, but they couldn't find that place to go. So the place that they went was either the street, it was either social media, it was either just depression within their homes. So it was just a cry, and I heard it daily when I was talking to different people. The cry that they were calling out for someone and something to hold on to. They had no foundation, so they were falling for everything. So truly, it was just the cry of my generation, of those who are connected to me, that really keeps me engaged in youth ministry.
I love it. So, Reverend CeCe, I know you have the privilege of working with Reverend CeCe and Reverend CeCe, and you guys work from the CME Church. You guys are doing what we did growing up, everything. We were the youth leaders. We were the choir directors. We were praise and worship leaders. We didn't have that then. It was devotional and all that good stuff. How old were you when you started in leadership?
I started in leadership at the age of 12. So right when I became a youth in the church, 12 is when I started in youth leadership.
Wow. Okay. We have some questions. Grace, can you hear me yet? Okay, we'll come back. We have got some questions in the chat that I can see that maybe you can't. Are there any, well, before we do that, let's do this. What topics or issues do you feel are not adequately addressed in youth ministry? You've been working with it, Damarion, for many years now.
The biggest thing is I think people aren't answering the questions that you have about God, about the way things work, about the creation of the earth, about the creation of human beings. I think the scripture always says, do not conform to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Our mind cannot be renewed if you aren't answering the questions that is at the top of our hearts, at the top of our minds. So answering those deep questions that we aren't getting on Sunday mornings, when we're only getting motivated to endure the tough situations, but we aren't getting asked, what does the scripture truly means? How can we relate it to our life? How can we go make a big impact? How can we go and make disciples from that scripture? So really, it's just the big questions that lie on our heart. And it's just, we're always getting fed too, that the biggest way to reach youth is through adding on TVs, adding lights, adding sounds, adding new ways. That's not what we want. We want to be engaged in the church. We want to actually have answers to the questions. We want to dive deep within the Bible. We want to become informed. And if we aren't informed in the church, we're going to be informed in other ways. We're going to find ways to be informed through astronomy, through our signs. I'm a Pisces, but I like to always say my sign is Jesus Christ, and that's because I actually know the Bible. So unless these questions are answered by those who are older than us, that's something that many youth are running away from.
I think I heard you say you don't need a youth leader who appears to be cool and wearing their hats backwards and trying to be young,
Right.
younger. I mean, that's not impressive to your generation or to anything like that. You need.
Yeah. Not at all. We know how to sniff out a fake. So if you aren't true to who you truly are, we aren't going to rock with you. So we need to make sure that you are true. So if that's your style, rock your style. But if that's not you, we know that we're not going to listen to you. You're fake to us, and we're going to keep moving.
Okay. I think I saw someone helping you, Grace. Now, can you hear me now? And you're on mute, though, Grace. If you'll unmute, if you can hear me. If whoever was helping you in the background, we got to hear from you. I think I saw your mom helping you a little bit, but your mic is on mute. If you can unmute, that would be great. Hi there. Can you talk to me? Hi. Okay, good. You can stay unmuted if it's okay. Yes. So you've been, I think we understand that your dad's a pastor, right? Is that right? Yes. We are having all kind of challenges. We talked to Grace the other night, and she had such a wonderful story about working and getting involved and getting young people and adult people involved in outreach and ministry. Grace, you want to tell us a little bit about your story? Man, I am so sorry. Sometimes technology.
Yes. My story. My story is about which was when I was about 7, and I remember this one night I was just sitting at the kitchen table, and I talked to my parents, and I said straight up to them, Daddy, Mommy, I feel some people, like some kids in the world, don't get as much as I do, and the stuff that I have, I take it for granted. So my parents, one morning, they got together and talked. Then my parents came to me and told me, you know what, we're starting a project called Grace's Closet. And then my mom decides my avatar and stuff. And then we started donating to this children's home near my church, Edwards Children's Home. I believe our last donation was Christmas, where we gave the kids gift cards so they could buy whatever they want for their Christmas present. And now our next donation is going to be in July, where we are going to donate book bags, lunch boxes, supplies, anything that you could have at the school.
Wow. Do you remember what your biggest amount was in getting the church and the adults to rally around and to help you?
I do. I believe the amount was $2,500.
Wow. All because she thought adults were just being helped and outreaching. And then she decided, no, the kids need some outreach too, and we need to get together. And it seems as though she's supported as well by her church. How can churches support your generations more? That's a question to Grace and Damarion.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start off. Something my pastor told me was culture changes every 5 years, but the church changes every 15 years. And another thing is that
I was 20.
Well, the church
Now I was 20.
Years.
Yep, now in the
we're
church
so
is 20.
behind.
Yep.
There's something that we need to be in tune with culture, but we can still be counterculture. That our method can be different, but our mission can still remain the same. We can still teach the Bible, but we can find different ways to engage young people. We need to be plugged into the community. The Bible says go, but the church always says come. So unless you are actually going and being plugged into high schools, into youth ministries, into the neighborhoods, we aren't going to come because we don't know what you're about. All we know is that you're full of just older generations who sometimes like to judge. So we need to make sure that we are actually going and making disciples and doing what Jesus calls us to do, and actually have different methods that can reach and relate to young people.
So I think what I heard you say, listen, I don't know about y'all. I don't even have to hear the Hammond organ, but I want to just like run away from this seat right at the moment and run back because I just want to done, right? Oh my gosh. Our methods can be different, but our message needs to remain the same. And young people are not about just not wanting God. This is some foolery that we have just accepted in some churches and in some realms, and it's unacceptable because we've got two young people here. Just how old are you, Grace, again?
I'm 9.
It was so funny because she said earlier, when I was 7, I'm like, well, how old are you now, babe?
Right.
Oh my goodness. You guys, Pastor, you want to jump in at all? I know you're having a fit, Pastor DJ. I know you're waiting.
Listen, they are the exception. But when I say exception, I don't mean exception like there are not other kids like them. I mean they're exceptional because they're ready to be on a platform like this, sharing what they share, and to give Damarion a little bit more, a few more stats. That it takes that 5 years to shift culture, but it takes 2 to 3 years to change what the old culture was before you can even implement the new culture. It's like people don't understand how much goes into that. And it just baffles me that they always want to determine for them. That's why I say you have to listen to them, because they're going to tell you the direction we need to go. They're going to give you information, give you the pulse of their generation, or watch this, the pulse of their crew, because there are different idiosyncrasies throughout specific generations, because you'll have a group that are highly in tune. They're all highly educated. They're all intelligent, but you'll have some that are highly in tune to the church, open and willing to allow the church to show them the way that they say that exists. Then you'll have another group that'll be like, yeah, I heard that before. You still my man, but yeah, I heard that before. Then you have another group that's just not going to come to church at all. And they're all across the same generation. So sometimes, you know, they take the easy way out by blaming the generation. Right. When the reality is there was faulty teaching, there was faulty leadership, and then there was faulty relationship building. Because like Damarion said, if it's your style, that's what you do. They affectionately call me the sneaker preacher, because if I ain't got to wear a suit, I ain't wearing one. Okay.
You're always in trouble.
I'm not going to put on a throwback jersey at 50 years old. unless it's Jersey Sunday. You know what I mean?
Thank
But
you.
you have to understand who you are and understand
Right.
the space that you're supposed to be in, because that is where God gets the most out of your anointing, when you are authentic and you're
Right.
not trying to create something out of nothing.
Let me just ask one more question. I see you, Dr. Williams, but how would you, what would you like us to know? Please tell the church. You got a whole audience. The whole world is listening right now. What would you like us to know about your generation and how you really engage God? I just really, really want you to answer that, because we misunderstand so often.
Yeah. We like deep personal relationships and interactions with God. We come to church, and it's a big gathering. But something that I've learned and that I see now in college and even in high school, the most intimate conversations, the most times when we actually feel the presence of God, is when we're just together, when it's just a group of us, a small group. It's the Bible says, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. So when 2 or 3 are gathered as youth, actually talking about God, that's when we are learning the most. So we don't always need big audiences. We don't always need a big gathering. Sometimes it just takes that intimate relationship, that intimate conversation that we truly enjoy and that we truly thrive on. So making sure that you are actually finding ways to just engage the small audiences, not just the big ones.
Demarian, Reverend CeCe bragged on you all and said, my youth will crush it. They're ready, and I don't even have to get them ready. And listen, we are all sitting here thanking both you and Grace for sharing your heart. What an amazing line. Go ahead, Dr. Williams.
Yeah. So now we're at the part of the program where we really want to hone in on some practical things. I want to pause and just mention and invite our audience to join us on June 13th at 7 p.m. Brandi Williams is going to be sharing with us some strategies for reaching and developing this generation. And you don't want to miss the webinar series that's going to help give you some step-by-step, more practical training and equipping for relating and creating this engaging youth and young adult ministry environment. But while we're in the room, I just want to throw out there, what are some practical things that we can do starting now to help us kind of hone in more on creating an environment that is open and safe for young people to encounter Jesus? What are some of the things you guys think youth leaders and leaders who are listening tonight need to know or do to open the door for that?
Get rid of the gimmicks. Less game time. Less, more Jesus, less games. Less. Really, like Demarian said it. It's make sure that there is some quality Bible, gospel lessons being taught. Stop going with the fly by nights. The fog machines and all that. I mean, that stuff has its place, but that is not what the majority want. They really want a real relationship with the Father, but you have to lead them. The problem is we have too many leaders that don't know how to point them to the way.
Wow.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, when we show up as our authentic selves, this is just a rule in life. When we show up as our authentic selves, we give other people permission to do the same. And so, like, that was one of the key research findings. Like, show me how to be authentically who I am in Christ. Like, don't just tell me, like most of us grew up, don't do this, don't do that. What can I do? Right? That was what one girl said. What can I do? Show me what I can do. And I know, from my own experience, like, I ran. I knew at 16 I was called, but I ran because I was like, if it has to look like that, I'm not doing that. Right? Like, so demonstrate what I can do. Healthy lifestyle, a lifestyle that is balanced, it has fun, it's relevant. I mean, I think Demarian said it best. Like, my message can be the same, but my methods can be different. I think that we have to remember that ministry should be driven by the needs of the people. Right. So you got all these putting on programs, and you have all these productions and things that you think are relevant, as opposed to asking people what it actually is that they desire. And so, I recall doing a focus group with some pastors, and the first question was just like, so tell me about the young people. And it was just a very quiet room. Like, tell me about young people in your life. Now, we were there to learn about their churches, but they couldn't tell us because they're not the ones on the ground with the young people, right? And so then I said, and so because it was so quiet, I said, well, do y'all have kids? Do y'all have cousins? Do y'all have neighbors? Like, can you just tell me about some young people? Like, even if you are not the one connected. And so that just shows you how out of touch. And I think, was it you, Pastor DJ, that talked about when people get old and frustrated, and so now you don't even have the great sort of patience to connect with the younger generation because you allow all that time to lapse. And so anyway, I lost my train of thought. So I'll leave it there. Oh no, one other thing. And I don't even remember the question, but I do want to say this.
Just put it in.
When it comes like from an organizational perspective,
yes.
Right? Like if you just think about, and a lot of times people don't even want to think about the church as a business or as an organization, but yes, it very much so is, right? And so if you're talking about mission drift, right? If an organization is trying to understand what the state of their mission is, how they're exercising, they're going to assess the mission, right? And so they're going to say, how are we lining up against these things, against this mission statement, against this vision statement? And then you take it a step further and you say, okay, this is my mission statement. Say, and this is real practical for somebody that's listening to me. You take your mission statement and you take it line by line, maybe every line that has an action statement in it. And then you ask yourself, how does that action statement that you say that your mission is relate to how you engage with young people? So those are the things just from an organizational standpoint, because that's my PhD, organizational leadership. From an organizational standpoint, you know what I'm saying? How does it align with your mission and vision that you know, those statements folks read every morning or read every Sunday and things like that? How does it align? Are you living up to that mission when it comes to your young people?
Wow.
For me, I would say I have three things. One, if your church has a plan or a strategic plan that does not include young people, throw it out and start all over again.
Not to throw it out.
Because you can't, how do you plan for the church, but you don't plan for a group of people in the church?
Come on. Wow.
You know, show me your Christian education budget and I can tell you the life of your church. If you haven't put money there, that's it, right? And if the young adults, those in our denomination with the 1835, if the young adults decide that they don't want to play no more and they take their kids, where is the bottom of your church?
And they money.
Because they do have money. They might not give it to you, but they have money. And some of the reasons why, because if you work in corporate America and you understand about money, you understand about investments, you understand about how you're spending your money, if it does not line up with what they feel and believe, they're not going to give you their money.
That's so true.
They might come to your church, but give before they get to church to that other church that's online before they get there.
Because they're looking for manifestation of mission.
Absolutely.
And if they don't see the mission being accomplished, there's no reason to invest.
Yes. My second thing is train young people. I work with, I love them. I started a thing called I Lead Youth Leadership Academy. And that really was because I did not see young people really being able to step up to the plate. Now they have great ideas, but being able to walk alongside of them and helping them to understand what it means to be a leadership. And for Dartanyan on the level that they're on, he's not just talking about like a local church. We talking about being the president of all the young people in the denomination. And so being able to walk with them through that process, this is what it looks like, having the one-on-one meetings. I allow them to plan, do whatever, but do what you got to do to reach your generation. And giving them the support behind it to say, I believe in you enough that I'm going to sit right here and allow y'all to go forth and do what need to be done.
Wow.
The third thing, train your replacement while you are living. I have been training my replacement since I started in youth ministry 24 years ago. every young person that comes into contact with me who say they want to be a leader, they want to run for office, great. Once you become an officer underneath of my leadership, you're going to learn how to plan meetings. You're going to learn how to go find stuff. You're going to do everything you got to do, because I want to make sure, God forbid I drop dead, I want the ministry to go on, and I want the ministry to be better than it was with me. But I got to be willing to train my replacement while I'm here. That if my replacement has a question, I can offer solutions now and not let them try to figure it out. When we look at the word we, the W and the E, that's the wisdom of the older and the energy of the young. Putting it together, we can make it work.
Come on, Reverend CeCe. I love that.
You gotta be willing to do it. I don't mind. They'll tell you, I don't mind. I want them to lead and lead and lead. And I have no problem standing in the background, cheering them on and letting everybody else know that I trust them, I believe in them, and I have no qualms. Trust me, they're going to be able to do it. And this generation that's coming up, they will surpass everything we ever wanted to do. But we got to give them a place to do it in the church, or they're going to find somewhere else to do it.
Wow. Listen, these practical steps that our guests have shared, all the wisdom our youth have shared tonight, is so valuable. We want you to take away the practical things that can shift the culture of your youth and young adult ministry at your church. This is not the end of the conversation. As Pastor DJ projected on Tuesday night, we are at the beginning of a very important conversation. So not only do we have the webinar coming up in June, we also have our Stronger Churches Conference that's going to be held August 24th. Listen, we're in the early bird registration time frame for this conference. You want to get in while the getting is good. It's a one-day conference in Salisbury, North Carolina. We're going to have church talk speakers, one of whom is going to be Pastor DJ, and he's going to be leading a mini lab for us on multi-generational ministry. Now, y'all heard him tonight. You heard Brandi tonight. Listen, you don't want to miss these events. Mark them on your calendars, and don't just show up. Bring your youth leaders and bring your youth. Bring your church leaders. Bring the deacon board, the decision makers, the lay leaders. Bring everybody. Pack up the whole church. Bring everybody to Stronger Leaders Conference on August 24th. You do not want to miss this opportunity. Listen, we've had a very rich conversation tonight, and we're about to leave. Any fire in your bellies? If you've got one more thing you want to say to everybody, let's hear from everybody.
Is there a way, Grace, I want to thank you, Grace, for being on. You have an amazing story. Is there a way that we can sow into Grace's closet?
How do we give to Grace's closet? How do we give to Grace's
You can
closet?
sow into Grace. You can give to Grace. You can give to Grace's Closet by donating to Good Hope CME Church. The address is 1032 St. Paul's Church Road, Gilbert, South Carolina, and I think the zip code is 29054.
Okay, great. So what we'll do is we'll go back and we'll drop that information in the comments section. We'll share some photos of what Grace's Closet has been doing. It's a phenomenal project. Myra.
Yeah, before we leave, I saw Dartanyan. You asked the question, is there a fire in your belly? He was like, I have one more thing to say.
You got one more thing? Close it out.
I want to hear it.
It's just Reverend CeCe said one thing about mission and making sure that we are actually enacting the mission. If we're enacting the mission of Jesus Christ, we understand that he was a social justice advocate. So speaking up for the oppressed, and many of Gen Z, as you can see, is very engaged in social advocacy and civic engagement. So making sure that our churches are standing up for what's right and engaging the youth in the same platform is something that's very important to me and something that's very important to youth as well. So enacting that mission through social justice advocacy.
That is so true. They are passionate about the issues that impact our lives, right? And so our ministries just can't be focused on the spiritual aspect, but we also have to pay attention to the social issues, and never more than this year when we have so much on the table. young adults are watching, they're listening, and they're ready to do something in their community. So the more we can offer an opportunity for that to happen, the more engaged they're going to be through our congregations. Listen, this has been an incredible conversation tonight. We want to thank you all for joining us. If there are any last words before we go tonight, you can go ahead and open your mics and let's tell our audience good night tonight.
Grace's mom just dropped
Yes.
the information in the chat. Please pay attention to that for those of you who would love to support Gracie's Closet. Thanks for being
Thank you
here.
so much, Tori, for doing
Yeah.
that for us.
And I just want to say, as we are concluding, 2 words: same God. The same God that has worked through the past generations is the same God who will work in and through this young generation. I think it's prideful. I think it's haughty to believe that that God can't get the glory through the lives of young folks. And so my question to leaders, who are watching is, if you hear what we're talking about tonight and we're talking about you, just ask yourself, like, could it be that the very thing that you are shunning is the very thing that God wants to use for his glory, and particularly within your particular ministry? And those are my last words.
On that
And the Bible
closing note,
tells us in Proverbs, really quick, that there will come a time where wisdom will laugh at our calamity. So while pastors are answering the question that Dr. Brandi just said, they need to ask themselves how much time they think they got.
Mm-hmm.
and on that note, we're going to close tonight. We're going to leave you to sit with Jesus and reckon with the Father how to move youth ministry forward. Thank you so much for joining Faith, Flow, and Thrive tonight. We ask that if you love the conversation, hit the love icon, give us a good like, share this conversation, and let's keep the conversation going. Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Night, guys.
Good night.
Blessings.
Good night. Blessings.
Night.